Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right.
I'm Marlene Cuellar.
And I'm Asana Kertano. Good morning.
And thank you for joining us. Of course, this is our first show for 2021.
Indeed it is. It's the 4th day of January, 2021. I got to get used to saying 2021. It'll take a few days for it to actually settle in.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what happens for the beginning of January, especially where if you're writing or sometimes when you're talking about the year, you're still trapped in the past, right? All right, but we're going to check in with our weather and find out what we can expect for today. Good morning.
Good morning, Marlene and
Good morning.
How are you? Happy New Year.
Same to you guys.
All right. So it seems that the new year started with a wash-off of 2020. Is that what's happening?
Okay, yes, that's what I'm seeing. As you saw yesterday, it was very wet.
Yeah.
It will continue so for most of today, and then we'll be seeing a decrease in moisture activity. So we'll be seeing cloudy conditions today, a few showers around the country this morning, decreasing and becoming isolated later this afternoon and tonight.
All right, and those winds?
Winds will be out of the east, 5 to 15 knots, and producing light chop seas.
Okay. And what about the temperatures?
Okay, a bit on the cool side, I would say 83 along the coast, 85 inland, 76 up in the Maya Mountains for this afternoon. And then tonight we're seeing 75 along the coast, 72 inland, and 65 up in the Maya Mountains.
All right. And what about the extended forecast? Are we going to be seeing more showers in the next few days?
Okay, we'll be seeing, I'd say, a mixture. We'll start out with isolated showers around the country tomorrow morning. In the afternoon, we'll see slightly more over inland areas, and then by nighttime, back to isolated showers. And then Wednesday will be a splendid day.
Okay, well, that sounds good. All right. Well, thank you very much for that update.
You're welcome.
You have a great day today.
Thanks, and same to you guys.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Very straightforward. We're getting more rain.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to Wednesday if it's going to be a splendid day.
One day at a time. All right, but it isn't too much, and you can still you can move around comfortably. But we do know that we'll be expecting some more showers today and into tomorrow. And now for a bit of motivation to get us started, let's jump into our eye opener. And our eye opener, taken from dailyom.com, goes like this. You have the choice to accept your life script you've written thus far or edit so you can create a life that fulfills you. Our lives can be compared to an ongoing movie script over which we have complete creative control. Within us lies the power to examine what works or isn't working in our lives and make edits to our life script accordingly. Choosing to actively edit your life can be incredibly empowering. As you evolve, you have the choice to accept the script you've written thus far or edit it so you can create a life that fulfills you. You can cut out from your life script what is no longer working for you. Acknowledging that you are responsible for the experience you create gives you the ability to create the life you've always longed for. To begin editing your life, simply think about your positive and negative experiences. When you determine what parts of your life are no longer serving you, make the commitment to remove them. Then ask yourself, what has brought you profound bliss and consider how you make those experiences and beliefs part of your life now. With a little editing, you'll be able to clear out what is no longer serving you and make room in your life for more happiness, love, and wisdom.
This is very straightforward, and I like the analogy of one's life being a movie script, where you have complete creative control of how you want the movie to take shape and how you want it to end, right? So that as you go through the journey of life, there are decisions, there are certain pathways that you will take, and everything hinges on that decision, and the decision is the edit point, so to speak, right? For us in the media, we're very aware, very familiar with how editing works. You have an in point and an out point, and you can add to your timeline or remove from your timeline accordingly. And so when you look at the big picture of your life being a movie, there are certain experiences that you will go through that provide certain emphasis in that story being told. There are certain things that, you know, you won't want to either relive, or you won't want other people to look at you in a certain kind of way because of it, so you have that opportunity to work on it. And sometimes we say we edit things out, but I don't really look at it that way. My perspective is more of changing course or brushing things up, you know, especially like if you're dealing with your past or whatsoever. You can't really remove that, but you can always, you know, work on bettering and learning from those experiences.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's a wonderful analogy. And I think for me, what stands out is just, I mean, one, it's so perfect for the beginning of the year. I think as a lot of people, we kind of like having the idea of putting boundaries on time, you know, so you end one year, you start another. And a lot of people take this time to reflect on the year that has passed. And definitely, I'm sure no one predicted that we'd be where we are now.
Yeah.
But the point is, in moving forward, I'm sure we've all had that feeling where something in your life is just not right. You don't like how things are going. You know, you want it to be better. But here you are with script in hand, and there's no writer that's going to come and, you know, miraculously get things moving in that right direction for you, or to change the path of what you're currently doing. You have that control. And so as we start off the year, I think it's so perfect to have an eye-opener like that to just remind us that we have the full capacity to edit what is happening in our lives. Of course, going back to recognizing that there are some things and some, well, all people that you can't change, but you can focus on yourself, and you can be able to make the moves that you need to do to rewrite that script. I love it.
Yeah. Well said, well said.
All right. So we're going to keep things moving this morning. It is time for us to get started with Eye on the News.
All right, so one of the big stories that we ended the year 2020 with is one that had been mentioned or announced previously, but was only just made formal on Thursday, which is the disbanding of the Gang Suppression Unit and the Anti-Gang Task Force, and the emergence, if I may, of the GI3, which incorporates various aspects of law enforcement, which includes intelligence work and other areas, right? It's an iteration of what we would ordinarily know as a specialized task force to look at gangs, gang activity, to look at organized crime and all of these other infringements, if I may. And so it comes at a critical time, because as we go into the year 2021, we're also looking at a small or incremental expansion of the Belize Police Department with Intake 95, where 225 additional recruits are being brought into the force. And when you look at what is currently taking place within law enforcement, it is a very dynamic time for them. One of the other things that I'm looking at in that particular context, Marlene, is the fact that you will have another round of elections for the Police Association coming up. And you would know that for some time, things have been mired in legal back and forth with the association and its previous president, Eldon Arzu, whom I understand is also running again. Again, these are matters that to some extent are before the court. We have reported on the suit between the commissioner and Mr. Arzu. I don't know that there has been any finality to that as yet insofar as a decision, but it remains live. And I'm just looking at the police department sort of from a universal point of view here in terms of what all is taking place and going into a year where, while we're ending one year on a considerably lower murder rate, there are still lots of things to do within the department to strengthen itself and, of course, the way they go about protecting and serving.
Yeah. I think one of the things that you noted was looking at the statistics that were released from the Belize Crime Observatory last week, where it is very clear, and we were seeing the picture very early on, that there are less major crimes for 2020 and significantly less murder, or murder rate has gone down, which we've struggled with for quite some time. I think it's interesting, and I'd love to be able to see, we have a lot of social scientists in this country to maybe be able to dive into it further and look at where you saw declines. Four things technically. Three things happened last year. We had 2 state of emergencies where people who were believed to be associated in gang activity, they weren't charged, were put in Kobe Foundation. I think the first time was 30 days and the second was 60 days, and then there was also the absolute lockdown of the country. So it would be really interesting to look at those numbers and see when we saw the murders and the major crimes taking place and how they overlapped, or if they overlapped with the state of emergencies and the lockdown that took place. Because it was very easy to know that with a curfew in place, it's a lot harder to go out and commit crime. So that's one thing. But 2, the formation or amalgamation or rebranding, whichever word you choose, for what was the Gang Suppression Unit and the Anti-Gang Unit to now GI3, I think is only part of what the discussion is. The second is really looking at what policies and strategies change with the name. Because you can change the name, but if it's the same old product that you're getting, then that's a serious concern. And we know Minister Musa was extremely vocal pre-election about the activities of the Gang Suppression Unit. We saw the commissioner post-election get online with the same thoughts, that there were some issues there as well, and acknowledging that there was a need for disbandment. So I think it's important now to hear from them as to what is different with GI3. Is it just a new name with the same old, or is it going to be a brand new repurposed unit, perhaps to be more effective on cracking down on gang activity and the crimes that come with that?
Well, in a previous interview we had done with the commissioner and, of course, the minister, this would have been on November 18th of last year, they did allude to a strategy being put in place insofar as putting together this new task force. And we're yet to see that strategy come to fruition, but I'm certain that under the command of Lyndon Flowers, who is a career officer who has also headed the Gang Suppression Unit in the past, that there will be some form of policy or guidelines set in place for the members of this task force to operate under. So that's the first thing, Marlene. I just wanted to mention that at the top of the new year, that this is what we're looking forward to from the Belize Police Department. The other thing that I want to look at is the fact that the House of Representatives will have its first actual work day, so to speak, this Friday. We know that in December of last year, there was the inaugural opening of the House of Representatives in which the area representatives for all 31 constituencies, at the time, save for Dido Vega, were sworn in to become official parliamentarians. And so this Friday will be the first actual sitting of the House of Representatives. And there are quite a number of things on the table, Marlene. We're looking at the current financial situation, the state of the economy. We're also looking at the COVID pandemic and the continued response to that by the government of Belize. So there are a number of issues that will stem from that we're anticipating will be discussed on Friday. Now, going back to the state of economy, the Prime Minister in his New Year's address had mentioned quite frankly that the country is broke. So we are yet to see what now will take place in so far as either supplemental allocations in terms of what the outlook will be for the 2021 budget and all of these other issues that come out of where we are as a country financially.
Yeah.
Right? So that is what we're looking forward to this Friday. And of course, the final thing that I wanted to touch on, and I know certainly that this will be a conversation we'll have after the break, but it's just to formally acknowledge in this segment the passing of the first Governor General of Belize, the late Dame Minita Gordon. She passed away over the weekend at 90 years old. Most of us who are, I don't want to
certain
put my age out
generations,
there,
yeah.
Certain generations of us would be very familiar with Dame Minita Gordon.
Yeah.
She has been instrumental in many different ways, not only as the former titular head of state, but she has been active in certain areas of education and what have you as well. And so she will be remembered for those contributions to the Belizean society. Like I said, I don't really want to go into too much at this point because that will be a point of discussion in the show when we begin proper.
Yeah, it's right though. I do acknowledge, because I think when I saw the outpouring of messages of condolences, I realized that when we grew up, we learned quite a bit about Dame Minita Gordon, and so that was part of our education there.
Yeah.
We saw her as well, so it connects a lot differently, I think, than the younger generation as well. But as we noted, we'll be talking a bit about her life and her work in our first conversation for today.
Yeah. So that rounds out the Eye on the News for this morning. Certainly these stories and more we'll be looking at in depth at 6 o'clock in our evening newscast.
And with that, we are going to get moving into our show for today. And as we mentioned just now, our first conversation is going to be talking about the life of Dame Minita Gordon. And we're going to have her aide who worked with her talking about his personal experience with her and some of the things that he was there to witness as she carried out her duties as our first Governor General.
The second conversation is the year 2 of the coronavirus. There are a number of unknown factors that we'll be trying to unravel and look at in our second segment as we continue our ongoing coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic.
And earlier we talked about editing the script of your life. Well, our third conversation is going to be really helpful in doing so. We're going to be joined by a life coach who's going to be talking to us about planning for 2021, even in the middle of a global pandemic. So that's what we're going to be closing off with for today. So we'll take that break, and when we come back, we'll be having a conversation about the life of Dame Minita Gordon.
If we are only as strong as our families, businesses, institutions, and the communities that surround us, then by giving businesses the power to grow, entrepreneurs the ability to expand, and by giving our families the right to own something. The Belize Bank gives you the power to build a nation, our nation. We are stronger together. The Belize Bank, our country, your bank.
It's a fact that your credit lasts longer when using Smart. During these times, we're all trying to find ways to cut costs and save the little resources we have. With Smart, it's easy to do that. It's a fact that with Smart, your credit lasts longer. You can call Smart to Smart and Smart to Digi using your promo credit, while with the other guy, you can only call OnNet, Digi, or BTL numbers. What does this mean? You get to call any national number using your promo credit. Your promo credit is free, so that call is also free. Know your facts. Don't be tricked by the other guy. Be smart and save your dollars.
Everyone is at risk of catching COVID-19, so it's important to quickly recognize signs and symptoms of the infection. The most common symptoms are fever, dry cough, and tiredness or fatigue. Some people may also have sore throat, aches and pains, stuffy nose, or diarrhea. But a few people have also reported pink eye or conjunctivitis, headache, loss of taste or smell, a rash on skin, or change in the color of fingers or toes. Emergency warning signs that require immediate medical attention are extreme difficulty breathing, severe constant pain or pressure in the chest, becoming confused, unable to talk or move, bluish lips, face, fingers, or toes. For more information, call 0800 MOH-CARE. Help keep Belize safe.
Miss Belize.
The new Miss Universe Belize will be announced live Saturday, January 9th, right here on Channel 5, starting at 3 p.m. Find out who will be representing the jewel at the next Miss Universe pageant.
And we'll be back in a few, so stay tuned. Thanks, Jen. Hey there, we know you have to head out to work shortly, but don't forget that you can stay tuned by watching us on our Facebook live stream. Find us at Open Your Eyes BC, and you can continue watching there. You can also download Facebook Watch on your streaming device, and you can watch at your own convenience.
And for all the behind the scenes fun, follow us on Instagram at OYE Belize. So,
Find us
and follow us
today.
When someone you love becomes a memory, the memory becomes a treasure. Channel 5 introduces the Daily Obituaries. The Daily Obituaries will broadcast all death and funeral announcements and memorials to honor your loved one's life and memories. The Daily Obituaries airs on Channel 5 prior to the evening newscast, with subsequent repeats at 10 p.m. and 12 noon the following day. It will also be placed online on our social media platforms, all for a standard package fee. Celebrate their lives and memories with Channel 5's Daily Obituaries. Honor in life and reverence in death.
Been drinking all night. Feeling so high. Better not drive. Won't even try.
Been drinking all night. Feeling so high. Better not drive. Ain't gonna try. Been drinking all night. Feeling so high. Better not drive. Ain't gonna try. If you're drinking and driving, I'm not going with ya. If you're drinking and driving, I'm not going with ya. People die every day, I'm not going with ya. I'ma find my own way, I'm not going with ya. It's okay, I'll wait. Even good people make mistakes. I don't wanna realize when it's too late. Drinking and driving is never safe. If you're drinking and driving, I'm not going with ya. If you're drinking and driving, I'm not going with ya. Been drinking all night, feeling so high. Better not drive, ain't gonna try. Been drinking all night, feeling so high. Better not drive, ain't gonna try.
Belize has the highest population of the Antillean manatee in the world, and we'd like to keep it that way.
The Sea to Shore Alliance and our partners have been fighting to protect our environment and these endangered manatees.
Each year, however, their death rate continues to increase rapidly due to watercraft collision, destruction of coastal habitat, entanglement in fishing gears, garbage pollution, and poaching. Yes, poaching.
These animals are in dire trouble and they need our help.
It's our responsibility as Belizeans to protect what belongs to us.
In order to create a safe environment and future for our aquatic friends, we must act now.
Respecting no-wake zones and manatee habitat is important.
Practice sustainable fishing methods and properly discard damaged fishing gear.
People throw garbage everywhere, except in the garbage can.
Garbage stops here.
When we safeguard important habitats such as mangroves, seagrass beds, the barrier reef, and our marine lives, we are safeguarding our livelihoods.
I want you to look after my future.
What about me?
When I grow up, I want to see manatees.
We are asking for your support, and we thank you for recognizing the importance of manatees and their habitats.
Thank you for caring.
Big thank you from our aquatic friends.
I am a humanitarian.
I am a humanitarian.
We are humanitarians.
Protect. Protect. We protect.
We should protect our manatees.
We must protect them.
Protect what belongs to us.
Protect ours.
Protect your manatees, Belize.
Are back, and we are joined this morning by a well-known face. Of course, we have Alan Usher with us, who served as the first aide for Dame Minita Gordon, or first Governor General, and we're so happy that you decided to participate in this conversation, as we wanted to put into perspective our first Governor General's life and the work that she did. So good morning, Alan.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, Marlene. Good to be on the air with you again.
All right.
So let's talk about your time as the aide-de-camp, working along with former Governor General Dame Anita Gordon. What was your experience like, both from a personal and a professional point of view?
Well, it was actually a wonderful experience. And just to put a little background, an aide-de-camp is actually it's a military officer assigned to a high-ranking official, basically, as it says, to aid and provide, make sure meetings are set up, make sure the principal knows where he's going, etc. I took over aide-de-camp duties from Tom Greenwood, who was aide-de-camp to the British governor at the time. So I took over from Tom Greenwood, and I have also the dubious honor of being the last ADC for the British governor. On the lead up to the independence, I was told that the decision of a Governor General is not yet announced, and that I should attend all the meetings on behalf of the Governor General's office, taking notes and find out where the Governor General is to go and what time to show up and what time and everything. So for the weeks leading up to the independence, that is what I was doing. We already knew that Her Majesty would be represented by the Prince Michael of Kent. And actually I was working out of the governor's office at that time, taking notes, preparing for that announcement of the Belize's first Governor General. When it came some days before, I think the Independence Day was the 21st, which was a Monday. And I think it must have been the Friday or the Saturday. I found out who the Governor General was. Obviously, I had never met the lady before. I found out where she lived. And straight away, I went across to her house on Pluge Street, made an initial meeting and told her who I was and what I was doing. And by then I already had my notes all typed up. This is before computers. And started to brief her on basically the program that will take place over the next coming days. I could still think back, that was a very long, very long weekend. The Saturday, the Sunday, and leading up to the Monday. Very long weekend. We had delegates arriving from all over the world. There were lots of things to arrange, and it was quite busy.
Yeah. And at that time, she was in fact already a very accomplished woman.
Yes, indeed. That's when I found out. I was looking at the CV that Ms. Shanish had sent across the CV last night. And I remember sitting down, that was one of the things we had to do. We sat there, I think it must have been a Saturday afternoon, in her sitting room, and she gave me verbatim date of birth and what school she went and what she had. So the first bio, the first CV that was produced was actually my handwritten notes that I took back up to the BDF. We managed to type out and able to give people like GIS, Government Information Service, and like that, you know. So then I realized that there was a person like that in Belize, somebody that had really at that stage accomplished quite a lot in terms of service to the education effort of Belize, as well as abroad, both in Britain and Canada. Getting qualified, really well qualified in the terms of well, specifically focusing on education.
Well, that's where I first met the former Governor General, because my dad had received a scholarship to study in Canada through her, and that's how our familiarity with her grew. Share with us her personality. I mean, working closely with someone over a period of time, you get to know how they are on a day-to-day basis. What was that like?
Well, I think she was a very intense person, very analytical, I guess when you do PhD studies, that's what you get hammered into you, is that you're analytical about everything. And it was really a wonderful working experience. Of course, I was in a teaching mode at that stage. You know, the fellow standing in front of the bunch of soldiers is a major. That rank is what that rank is, and the guy with the one stripe is a lance corporal, and there's a full guard is 96. The flag to the middle of the parade is the colors. So there's a whole new world that she was going into. Obviously, public administration, she would have had that experience from working in the Ministry of Education and indeed the Education Department. But going in, understanding the military, understanding the functions of the state was obviously a new experience, which she picked up quickly. From a personal point of view, I think she, if you go earlier into her background, she is firstborn in Belize of Jamaican immigrants.
Okay.
And so she grew up in rural Belize, I think up in the Mascal St. Anne's village area was where she spent her early childhood. And basically she fought her way up through the education system, well, work-wise and school-wise, to achieve a doctorate level. So she knew the value of hard work. She knew the value of paying attention. She knew the value of putting her all into something. And I think what irritated her the most was when she received mediocre work. You have various levels of people working within government. I think one of the big criticisms was that she was changing her public service assigned staff too quickly. And basically, she wanted people to pay attention to the job. She wanted people to do their best. There's no reason why a whole lot of people cannot just simply do their best, pay attention and do their best. And I think that is what irritated her the most. And really, she demanded perfection. She demanded the best from everyone. And I think that was the biggest part of her frustration. On the other side, Belize being a newly independent country, people were not accustomed to standing up for the anthem. Everyone knew God Save the Queen, which was the anthem up until the 20th of September. But come the morning of the 21st, when the flag was raised the first time, and the Belize national anthem played as the Belize anthem for the first time ever. After that, people, as I keep mentioning, people paying attention. I guess people, we had to coax people to stand up for the Belize anthem, and then so it began. Teaching nationhood, insisting on perfection, and Belize coming out of that infancy and growing up to become a country so many years later.
She was also, I believe, the only female representative for the Queen at that time. And given the fact that Belize was newly independent, how significant, I mean, how did people view the role of Governor General and specifically of Dame Gordon?
Well, it's a straightforward role, really. The head of state of Belize, as it remains within the Commonwealth, is Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. And she is represented by a Belizean-born person. It's the same system that exists today in Canada and Australia and New Zealand and several other countries, and Jamaica, and several other countries in the world maintain the same system. Some people find it hard. There's still a very strong anti-colonial sentiment within Belize. And some people find it hard to accept that there's a distant head of state represented and all that. basically Belize is a small state. The first question when there's talk about replacing the head of state with a Belizean president, for example, is one, well, we'll have to change the constitution as well, because there are two systems in the world. There's a parliamentary system and there's a republican system, and it's either one or the other. Yes, people have tried to change or use a mixture of both. But basically, the two, well, there's a third system, but we won't go into that. But basically, there are two systems, one or the other. I would liken a country's, a small democracy that stays within the Commonwealth. I would liken it to the grandparents looking after the grandchildren. They're not directly responsible for the grandchildren, but if there's abuse or there's neglect, the grandparents would step in. And I think we've seen that happen across the Commonwealth landscape over the past, well, within recent history. There's some countries that had digressed to human rights abuses and other unconstitutional activity like suspending elections and extending terms of office, and that is where the Commonwealth of Nations would come in and say, hey, look, your constitution say that you have to have elections. Your constitution say that you can't lock up people without a trial. Yeah. There are sanctions that were put on some countries until they came back in line, basically respecting the basic human rights of the people that live in these countries. So I think there's a lot to gain. There's a lot to gain. There's a lot to as a small democracy. To remain within the Commonwealth, and indeed the respect that the office of the Governor General carries with it. And I think Dame Anita was superb in that regard, because she insisted on the adherence to the principles of the Constitution, and she insisted on excellence. Yeah. So everything that her office did, everything that came out of my support for that office had to be right and proper and to the regulations, and there's no making it up as we go along. As we've seen has happened. Yeah.
What were some of her areas of passion that she had particular interest in?
Yeah, what I found intriguing, she showed me one day, she said, let me show you, and she pulled out a box and she had carved leather. Apparently in Canada, at some point, she attended a leather carving course and picked it up, and that was her hobby. She carved leather, and so I thought that was it. She liked her plants. There's a whole, I don't know if there's still a floral society or what it was called, but occasionally I would attend tea parties. I was the only male person there. I was dressed up with my gold ribbons and stuff like that. Yeah. And there's a whole bunch of people talking very excitedly about
plants and flowers.
Flowers and plants, and they got cuttings from this one, and they managed. So she was into her plants. She was into her leather carving. She spent a lot of her alone time doing those crafts.
You know, as the aide-de-camp, you get exposed to the Governor General in a way that the public doesn't. We would only see them for public appearances. What do you think is one of the things that people really didn't know about her, whether it's her personality or character traits? What are those things that you'd like them to know now in her passing?
I think a lot of people, in the early stages, were still accustomed to a governor. The governor would appear, and a new one would come, and the old one would go, and he's up there in the clouds, somewhere. And our Governor General was really a people's person at heart. She had a passion for women. She was a very strong advocate of women affairs and children. She was very concerned that children should go to school and children should have what they need to have to achieve excellence. So I think some people would have looked at her as a formidable person, but really in her heart she had the concerns and the interests of the most defenseless of our society, and that is actually the children and women that have suffered some abuse and like that. So really, she was a people's person.
And what's the one memory that you always share of the time you spent being her aide-de-camp?
What is the one?
The one memory that you always share.
Oh, I don't know. There are lots. I think back. I was saddened, and actually I wasn't able to. I know she has probably no family left in Belize. Her parents are long gone. I don't know of any. I had met a sister once, and I want to express my condolences for the loss of Dame Anita, and also I know she has a lot of friends. Long after I used to meet her, she would walk from where she lived in Newtown Barracks down to Belize City shopping. She didn't have a car after she retired. And she would walk to downtown Belize City and shop and walk along the seaside going back home. And many times I'd stop and talk to her. She didn't want a lift. She walked for the exercise. And so after she retired, and indeed after I retired, I maintained the contact with her, even if it was just a casual meeting on the seaside, you know.
Yeah.
But transferring her off one of our BDF patrol craft into a small boat in the rough waters, I think it was Barranco. I think we're taking her to Barranco one time. And I had to set up the whole trip. At the time, the BDF had a big 65-foot patrol boats, and we had anchored off Barranco, and it was very rough. There was some 4-foot waves, and we had to transfer Her Excellency from the patrol boat into a smaller boat and go ashore. And she was all dressed up with her official garments. And the transfer was intense, but she enjoyed it. A little bit of salt water is always good. I think it was not quite a gray morning. It wasn't raining, but the sea was very rough off Barranco, and we transferred her off the big boat into a little boat and bounced ashore. And when we got there, she put on back her shoes and hop onto the dock, and away we went, right?
Yeah.
So I think that would be one of the memorable events. All right. The royal visit, the first royal visit was very intense. It was the first time Her Majesty the Queen was visiting in 1985. And first time visiting Belize, and that took a lot of work, a lot of preparation. That would be the topic of another.
We'll definitely want to get that backstory as well. But we appreciate you sharing just these tidbits of your experience as the aide-de-camp of Dame Anita Gordon. We appreciate it. Thank you very much, and stay safe.
Okay, ma'am. Thanks for calling. Thanks. Bye-bye.
And with that, we are going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, it'll be for a COVID-19 update as we talk with Dr. Jorge Hidalgo about what year 2 of the COVID-19 pandemic may look like.
Currently, we're using Smart Elite VoIP calling plan. We use it interbranch, we use it to call outside, and we also use it to call internationally. It's far cheaper than what we used to have before. Our new PBX box is new. So the PBX is very good because I can call to my Sartania branch, I can call to my Kikaka branch, I can call to San Pedro branch and there's no cost using the PBX. Actually right now, since we're in different locations, I can call main office from where I am at a no cost using the PBX system. I would recommend it, sure I would, especially the big enterprises who has a lot of employees. There's a lot of reduction in costs, 50% of saving. But that on a year, it's a lot of money that we're saving. Money that we could return to our members since we give back dividend to our members.
Visit our showroom or call 670-6710 to find out how Smart's corporate plan and PBX systems can benefit your business. Consultation is free.
Todos estamos en riesgo de contraer la COVID-19, por lo que es importante reconocer rápidamente los signos y síntomas de la infección. Los síntomas más comunes son fiebre, tos seca y cansancio o fatiga. Algunas personas también pueden tener dolor de garganta, dolores y molestias, congestión nasal o diarrea. Pero algunas personas también han reportado conjuntivitis, dolor de cabeza, pérdida de sabor u olor, sarpullido en la piel o un cambio en el color de los dedos de las manos o los pies. Los signos de alarma de emergencia que requieren atención médica inmediata son dificultad extrema para respirar, dolor constante y severo o presión en el pecho, confusión, dificultad para hablar o moverse, labios, rostro, dedos de las manos o de los pies azulados. Para mayor información, llame al 0800-664-2273. Protejamos nuestra salud.
Miss Belize. The new Miss Universe Belize will be announced live Saturday, January 9th, right here on Channel 5, starting at 3 p.m. Find out who will be representing the jewel at the next Miss Universe pageant.
Today's COVID update is brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price but stay for the service.
And we're back, and we're moving into our second segment for today. This is, of course, our COVID-19 update brought to you by Fulltech Systems. And we are joined by internist and intensivist at the Belize Healthcare Partners Limited, Dr. Jorge Hidalgo, as we take a look at year 2 of the pandemic and some of the questions that still aren't answered. Good morning, Doc.
Good morning, Doc.
Good morning. Good morning. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too.
For 2021.
Yes, and the same to you. We are all moving into this new year highly optimistic that things will improve when it comes to the situation of the pandemic. So we wanted to get the chance to put things into perspective. A year ago, this time, COVID-19 or the novel coronavirus wasn't even on our radar in Belize as yet. It was just becoming an issue, I know, with the WHO and the cases detected in China. Let's look at some of the things and some of the questions we were able to answer last year before we talk about this year.
Yes, well, as you already mentioned, our global coronavirus nightmare is entering in second year. Mm-hmm. And of course, we are hanging there the best we can. Our world essentially has been put on a pandemic mood. Mm-hmm. And of course, there are many things that we see how the virus continues to spread, and essentially our lives was essentially put and turned upside down. We see how hospital and healthcare workers are overwhelmed. And as you mentioned, there are many questions that are still unanswered. Mm-hmm. Particularly, one of the questions that we still don't understand is the transmission of how this virus came up. No, mm-hmm. Of course we have and we manage the theory that the virus essentially initially came from his primary reservoir, which is the bat, and then the secondary intermediary, who is the pangolin, as they show that the pangolin have his genomic structure is similar like the coronavirus. No? However, we don't know as yet that this is something that probably just the time it will reveal. No? Okay. But that is the theory that we so far managed. No? Yeah. And as you say, a year ago we was entering into unknown medical condition. It took us by surprise, as many countries that we believe have the best healthcare in the world essentially reveal the weaknesses of our healthcare systems, not only in Belize but around the world.
Yeah. When we look back at last year, the year of learning and even unlearning things about this new disease, there were some certainties, I think, that we were able to determine, or that scientists, I should say, were able to determine. You know, first there was a question of whether masks would work. Now we know they work. At first they thought it was a primarily respiratory illness, and now we know that the virus attacks more than just the lungs. It can attack any other part of the body as well. Talk to me about some of the things that we know moving into this year about COVID-19.
Well, as you will say, we entered in last year with a very trying to understand the behavior of the virus, and that, of course, we entered into our learning curve around the world. Now we know a little bit more. Unfortunately, I say that we know a little bit more because, despite of all the efforts, as you see, COVID-19 is still taking many lives. We in terms of our armamentarium of medication, we are still limited to few that it shows a proof based on the randomized clinical trials that work. No? I mean that despite of that efforts that the scientific community around the world have made to trying to develop and also to provide us with more resources in terms of treatment, the treatment is still basic, limited, essentially supportive in especially for those patients that get critically ill. No? I mean that most of the effort are that we, or most of us are recommending, is trying to prevent the condition to get into a point that we are that is high, or we are essentially out of control. And one of the hopes everybody have is that the vaccines, it will help us to provide the people with the herd immunization that we have. And when we talk about the herd immunization, we talk about the resistance to the spread of the infections disease within a population.
What are your thoughts on how fast the scientific community was able to move insofar as researching and coming up with a vaccine for COVID-19? When you look at other pandemics that may have affected the world in the past, you would have had years to study how to find the right medicine and treatment and what have you. But in this particular instance, it was only a matter of months. It's within a year that they had to, work tediously to find a vaccine or find some way to combat the disease.
Yes, that's a good question. No? That's probably one of the fears that many people have in terms of how we're going to get the vaccinated with a vaccine that probably was developed too quickly. What are the security I have? But the effort to develop a vaccine for coronavirus, it started with SARS in 2002. and then also with Ebola. Those two type of vaccine essentially help us as a platform to facilitate the development of the vaccine for SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19. That we already have like we can say, a plan for the vaccine that help us and facilitate the development of this vaccine more rapid. And of course, the fact that each technology or vaccine or whatever medication needs to go to a clinical trials, and then as you see that also in terms of the time, the different regulatory organization essentially facilitate the process for this development to be a little bit faster, especially for the phase 1, phase 2, and of course enter into the phase 3.
Yeah. So when we look at some of the information we were able to obtain in 2020, we learned transmission, we learned signs and symptoms, and I know that there is a lot of work in looking at treatments, but as you rightly noted, there's no definitive treatment as yet for COVID-19. Let's move it forward to this year, and let's talk about some of the things that are still unanswered. One of my questions is to look at the issue of reinfection. Is there any definitive studies yet as to what are the risks for reinfection?
Yes, that we know so far is that when you get infected with COVID-19, that will provide with a period of immunity that is runs in probably 3 months or we can say 40 weeks. That's still not completely sure. We're still in terms of what is the immunity that we acquire, that we know that is not a definitive. That that's one of the things that we know that if you get COVID-19, the chances for you to get reinfected is there. That because most of the time people get infected, and it provides the people with certain confidence, and in a way we can say acting in an irresponsible way, because they say, okay, I already contracted the COVID-19, then I'm not wearing a mask, or I'm not going to follow the different social distancing measures that we know and that been proved that are working. That is we know. And that you can get reinfected.
What are some of the other questions that are lingering as we move into 2021 about COVID-19 and the pandemic?
Well, probably the most important question, and that I believe all of us are essentially seeing and moving, is what the vaccines are going to offer in terms of immunity. We know that most of the vaccines are essentially 2 dosage, that the first dosage, they don't give you the immunity. We need to wait for the second dosage. Also we are looking at what is going to be the amount of population that finally are going to be able to get the vaccines. Of course, the most important question for countries like us is how soon the vaccine are going to come into our country. According with the COVAX agreement and compromise, is that the vaccine is going to enter in the first quarter of the year. That probably could be April or May. But of course, those are the things that we would like to know with certainty. And of course, as we know that initially the vaccine are going to be offered by the frontline workers, as well as for the more vulnerable population.
And what about long-term effects of COVID? Those are the questions that we don't have answers to as yet, right?
Exactly. As I mentioned, for long-term, one of the most important things we would like is that, as I mentioned, that the vaccine and that we'll be able to immunize as many people as we have that can provide with the population with the herd immunization that we want. Of course, I don't think so. This year, that goal is going to be able to reach. I mean, that I think so. We will probably enter 22. We're still battling with the coronavirus. Probably not as bad as we are seeing it right now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go
ahead. You go ahead.
No, I was going to ask if there's any information on why some people get severely sick and why others don't.
That's probably a good question. As we are seeing some of people get really badly sick, and then they enter into the ICU battling with a really bad type of the COVID-19, versus probably other person that probably was at the same time and exposed to the virus, and they probably have just mild symptoms of no symptoms. And one of the things we are learning is that if it had essentially with the genetic information or the phenotype of each individual. Of course, there are too much to investigate about it, but for now we know that this is more or less is basically the individual phenotype that allows the virus to be more aggressive in some people and less or no symptoms in other people. As also one of the other things we are seeing in severely affected people that make it true is that all the patients are experiencing something that we call it the post-COVID-19 lung. And what this exactly means is that the COVID-19 will cause some scar tissue in the lungs. Medically speaking, we call it a fibrosis that will essentially make them difficult to get through, and is a process of 4 to 6 weeks to 8 weeks for the patients to back to a normal life. And some of them, of course, we will need to see a more long-term period, but seeing some of the patients that became very sick at the beginning of the year, some of them are still battling and still on oxygen at home.
And do we know if any of these long-term effects are permanent?
That's we are seeing in some patients that had the COVID-19 severe, that some of the patients are still adapting and still on oxygen. Fortunately, it's not a big group of population, but it's something that we are start to seeing, and it's something that also we need to prepare for.
Do you foresee that as a Belizean society that there are going to be some who will take a anti-vaccine approach to the rollout of whatever vaccine we have coming in the months ahead? I know that, for instance, in the United States, you have people who have taken a staunch position against the vaccine. Do you foresee that perhaps we'll also have to go through some form of a campaign to raise public awareness on perhaps the benefits of getting vaccinated?
Definitely we need to, because of course there are too many misinformation about the vaccine. And of course, if you probably recall, even before COVID-19 and before this vaccine, from years before, there are certain group of population that are against immunization. And that's what the reason why some of the conditions that we thought was already disappeared, we start to see now, like poliomyelitis, measles, that we are start to see cases now that we thought at some years ago that we have it already well controlled and probably eradicated. No? However, we due to this campaign against immunization, now we are seeing measles and we are seeing some cases of poliomyelitis as devastating, especially poliomyelitis are.
You know, and looking forward, one of the things that the WHO officials noted in their end-of-year wrap-up was that COVID-19 is most likely set to become endemic, which means it'll be a disease that will linger and people may catch at any time of the year. So what does that say, what does that mean for you when you look at that particular situation for us in Belize, since we're talking about unknowns?
Yeah, that is something that we know, that the COVID-19 is here to stay. We don't expect the COVID-19 to be controlled. At least, even with vaccination, we know that there's certain amount of population that we are going to get vaccinated this year. We don't expect the whole population to be vaccinated. Mean that we know that over the following a couple of years, we are going to see cases of COVID-19, hopefully less and less, and hopefully the other vaccines get approved, but that we can be able to immunize a larger amount of population to control that.
Yeah, and one more unknown variable. I know there was a small study done looking at the impact of COVID-19 on asymptomatic patients, and they found that there was some changes within some other organs. Do we know definitively as yet as to what is the long-term effect on asymptomatic patients who have no symptoms whatsoever?
Well, so far, no. That we know is for patients that they have have the condition very serious, that we for sure know now. And we've been documented the effects of the COVID-19 in many ways. No, COVID-19 by itself and COVID-19 after being admitted in ICU. Mean that we see the effects that by COVID-19 itself is the affection of the lungs as a long term. And again, we need to know, and we are follow those patients closely, just to see how long the damage is going to be. Some of the lungs have really bad scar tissue that it can be affect them. We can say for the rest of the life, and of course, the economic impact that have over the families. No? In an acute phase, we see that, as you mentioned already, the COVID-19, it can cause a multi-organ failure. COVID-19, it can cause, we see patients that essentially, they take the liver, kidneys, blood system, we see the lungs, we see brain, and the brain also, patients after COVID-19 experience something like a post-traumatic stress disorder, problems sleeping, nightmares, along with the weakness and the fatigue that you experience for the following weeks after you've been discharged from the hospital.
Wow. And the mental health toll, that's also one of the unknown variables here.
And especially for those patients that are imagine you to be in a room and entering the third and the fourth week, and you're still dependent on oxygen and not knowing what is going to happen. No? In that it takes a lot from the people.
Doc, As a physician, and I know that one of the hardest adjustments of 2020 was accepting that there was just a lot of responses that said, we don't know yet, from the world's top officials. Moving into 2021, for you personally in your practice, you're dealing with COVID-19 patients in the COVID-19 unit there. What's one of the questions that you would like definitive answers to sooner rather than later?
Well, probably one of the most important aspect is to be able to access medication or at least to have a medication that it will definitely help, dealing with COVID-19. For right now, the medication we have is a supportive medication, is to control the amount of the inflammation that this virus causes in the body, but it's not like if you are treating a bacterial pneumonia and you say, okay, this is the antibiotic, and you will know with certain level of evidence that in X amount of days the pneumonia is going to subside. Yeah. And you can discuss that with your patient openly. But this is not the case with COVID-19. Despite of medications that we have that been in a certain way prove that they control the inflammation, you see your patients in the first, second, and third day, and you have your hand tied and hoping that the patient is going to respond. And some of them respond very quickly, and some others it takes days. I mean, that the most important as treating physicians, we probably one is to be able to have the proper armamentarium to deal with this COVID-19 disease.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And while we have talked so much about vaccines, is there any progress being made on effective treatment?
For vaccines or for...
No, for COVID-19. Vaccines are preventative, and I know we talk about that a lot, but the other aspect is being able to adequately treat it, as you pointed out. Has there been any progress in any part of the world?
So far, no. So far, there are many, as you see, there are many news and many information, but so far, in terms of vaccine is what we know now, and in terms of treatment is what we have right now. Of course, there are many randomized clinical trials, and I want probably the people to understand that when we talk about randomized clinical trial, we're talking about a double-blind study where certain amount of population, a bigger amount of population, are placed on something that we call it placebo and something that we call it the medication itself. To prove that this medication is going to be effective. I mean that most of the times, and especially for COVID-19, for us to be able to say, okay, this is the medication that is helping now. These medications need to go to clinic, to randomized clinical trials, and that's why for now we only have a few of them that we can use.
All right. And looking forward, anything else when you, as we enter into year 2, that you're hoping we'll be able to achieve?
Well, the most important thing, and I think so, what we are hoping is to be able to access the vaccine as much as, and to hopefully by the end of this year, an important group of the population can have access to the vaccine. To be able to achieve the immunization and to try to slowly go back to a more reasonable way of life. We know that to have to back to our normal lives as we live before COVID-19, I think so it will take a while, and we need to be responsible and knowing that, and knowing that we need to continue practicing that we every day insist. Social distancing measures.
That's right. That's one certainty we know. Those continue into 2021. All right, Doc, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate you taking the time to put year 2 of the pandemic into perspective. Please stay safe.
Thank you. Same to you.
All
Bye.
right. And with that, we're going to go ahead and take our break. And when we come back, we'll be joined by a life coach to talk about planning for 2021, even in the middle of a global pandemic. Please stay tuned.
This COVID update was brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service. Technology is ubiquitous, and it's transforming how, when, and where we work. Fulltech Systems is placing award-winning devices in the hands of information workers, allowing them to work without compromise in a world without wires, to innovate, create, and to maximize productivity anytime, anywhere, satisfying the needs of the desk-centric remote and field worker and every other worker in between. We are providing the industry's best devices to businesses going through the process of digital transformation. Partner with us today to provide the solutions that will allow your employees to work effectively and efficiently to enhance your customers' experience. Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
Caused intense flooding overnight in the western and southern parts of the country.
Yeah?
Do we need to renew the insurance policy?
The insurance policy?
Were impassable.
Oh, let me check.
Renew your policies, file a claim, and even send us a message using RFNG Online.
Now we're good. It says we're covered.
Okay, great.
It pays to get it right with RFNG Insurance, a road group company.
In these challenging times, the one thing that is certain is that the Belize Bank Limited is here for you. There is nothing more important than your health and safety, and we continue to make every effort to make banking safer for you. Our staff is working around the clock to make sure you can do your banking conveniently 24/7 using our mobile banking app and online banking and keeping ATMs up and running. We value your relationship with us and are here to provide the support you need. First responders are also out there 24/7. Thank you, healthcare workers, security forces, firefighters, caregivers. You are all appreciated. Stay safe. We will get through this together. The Belize Bank, our country, your bank.
Miss Belize.
The new Miss Universe Belize will be announced live Saturday, January 9th, right here on Channel 5, starting at 3 p.m. Find out who will be representing the jewel at the next Miss Universe pageant.
And we are back, and we're moving into our final conversation for today, and this one is to help you start your year off right. We are talking about planning for 2021, even in the middle of a global pandemic. We're joined by Melanie Escalante, who is a life coach. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, guys. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you as well. So, Melanie.
Sorry, thank you for the invite. I'm happy to be here.
I just wanted to start off by diving a bit into the work that you do. What exactly is a life coach?
Well, basically, I'm here to help people plan what it is that they want to do with their life and to implement. And so last year, in fact, for the last 2 years, I certified 3 years ago. And for the last 2 years, I had considered my niche area to be a performance and life coach. And so really I was looking to help leaders, business owners, and individuals kind of identify clearly what they want for their life and put in the plans necessary to get there. But in this last year with COVID, I think more and more as people kind of grappled with their own mortality and potential illness and things like that, I found that the people that were coming to me for help in that area were more interested in the significance in their life and having a vision for their life or for their business. And so we did a lot of work last year with my clients in the area of vision and strategy. And when I identified the need for that, then I kind of moved my niche into that area. So now I consider myself to be a vision and strategy coach.
Now, developing, or even I should say, articulating a vision that you have for yourself or your company is a big step in itself. But then the key part is building that strategy. How often is it that businesses or even individuals get stuck with just the vision in mind, but no way of getting there?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, actually, Marlene, because the vision is very, very important. In that sometimes, even when we're working on strategy, the strategy doesn't always become clear at the beginning. But what does happen is when you know what you want and you start taking at least the first step that you can see towards it, then other steps tend to reveal themselves. And so the vision is very important, but also so is a plan, because you need to know where to start, and you need to be able to kind of monitor your progress and keep on track, make sure you stay on track. And so the strategy is very important.
Now, it's hard to imagine planning in a year like what we know we just experienced, with a year like what we just experienced, kind of carrying over this in this year. What are some of the things that you've done, especially in the year 2020, to get people kind of grounded in the perspective that we are in the midst of this pandemic, but there is going to be an end at some point in time, and we must keep planning towards that?
Well, we did start obviously with the vision, and basically we follow at least the foundational pieces of a strategic planning process. And so we're really looking at what do you want? And we're not just looking at what do you want, but we're looking at that in terms of, what will it look like when you get there? Really get a vision for it. Imagine yourself living within the outcome itself, so that you're really clear on what that is that you want. And then we look at why, the purpose. It's so important to know why you want to do what you want to do. And in fact, it's the why that obviously makes it more compelling. And then after that, we start to look at, well, the how am I going to get there? And that's really your mission. So you're talking about vision, purpose, and mission. And the mission is on a big picture scale, the main key steps that you're going to take in order to be able to achieve what you see for yourself into the future. And after that, then we look at values, which is who are you going to be through this process. Your core values basically ground you in your decision making and making sure that you really are that person or that company that you need to be to ensure the success of your enterprise. And then after that, we start to look at objectives and strategies.
Do you find that there are more people or companies that are seeking this kind of professional advice and services this time around, considering perhaps the economic effect of what COVID-19 has had on the individual or their businesses?
Isani, I was very surprised at the number of new clients that came to me in 2020 because of COVID. And most of them that came to me are small business owners or individuals. And I would have thought that with the pandemic and the economic fallout from that there would have been a challenge for them financially to be able to invest. But it's interesting because they prioritized investing in what they need to do now and what they want to do and what they want to be in the future. And so it's really, yes, both levels, business and on a personal level, an individual level for people's life. And it's interesting because, Marlene started out by asking, what is life coaching? And I know that life coaching is not very well known in Belize at this stage, but people have heard about what I'm doing, and the clients are coming forward and with very little advertising. And so I find it very interesting.
Yeah. Well, and I think that any help that can be offered and even just gaining clarity as to what you want to do is important. And even, especially in small businesses where the dynamics of everything around us seem to be changing so rapidly, I could imagine that you'd lose sight of where you wanted your business to go just as a mere survival tactic. Let me just throw this question in early on. What are the obstacles that people encounter in being able to execute that vision from both a business perspective and even a personal perspective?
I think that a lot of it is around mental psychology, to be honest, not having the clarity. And so, having independent, non-judgmental, third-party space, if you like, outside of the business, where you can come, and especially on a small business where business owners have employees, but they might not have people who can help them to strategize the next steps, or they may be afraid to share their concerns, their worries about being able to stay in business and what the next steps might be, and they might feel that they need to be seen to be in control and don't want to concern their employees about job security and things like that. Yeah. So I think that what happens is having an independent support is vital to them at that point. And then they can kind of sit in the space and hear themselves aloud. And, oftentimes when we start to talk to ourselves in our mind, we can kind of create more concerns than there really are. We don't really test our concerns.
We talk ourselves out of things.
Sorry?
We talk ourselves out of things.
Yes. And when we start to say it aloud and you're going to get affirmation with somebody sharing back with you what you've said, you're able to start to hear yourself and wonder, is that really what I mean? Is that really true? And then kind of process your way through it.
Yeah. And there's also the challenge, I know sometimes, where we get paralyzed by all the analysis that we make. In a uncertain time or uncertain business environment like a pandemic, it's hard for people to imagine making drastic moves or following through on goals perhaps that they wanted to do at one point in time. What are your tips on how to be able to overcome kind of the fear of the uncertain times?
I think it's to maybe ask yourself some other questions. Mm-hmm. In other words, this idea that you said about sometimes we can talk ourselves out of something. Ask ourselves, is it true what I'm thinking? Or, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Is it true what I'm thinking? And what if there was no limitations? What would I do if there was no limitations? Some other questions that kind of can open your mind to other solutions, as opposed to staying stirred up by the concern of the moment.
Yeah. So let's talk to people who are watching right now. I've heard so many people say, I'm not making any resolutions. Look what happened in 2020. But the point is that, I think all of us are working towards fulfilling our purpose and potential. And we don't want to get stuck just kind of battling the pandemic in our own minds. So for people who want to put together a plan for this year, what's your advice to them?
Yeah, I would say first of all, clearly define what you want. And, you know, even on the smaller level, let's say we start with New Year's resolutions, and resolutions can often be, you know, a weight loss or a financial goal, saving money or improving relationships. We can talk in general terms like that. But if we spend some time with that and say, well, what does that really look like? What does my weight loss journey look like? Or how much money do I really want to save? Get specific with it. And why do I want to do that? Oftentimes, you know, when we start with a smaller resolution and we look at the why, we'll find an underlying, more important issue that comes up for us. And then once we've got clear on what we want and we identify, you know, who it's going to turn us into as a result, I think that that's compelling enough, you know, to want this change and to be a better version of ourselves. Then we start to make the plan. And, you know, within that plan, you kind of want to look at, so what do I want to do by when? And your plan does two things. One, it can hold you accountable. It can keep you on track. And two, it can encourage you, because if you break it down, if you break your weight loss goal down, or your financial goal, or your relationship goal down into smaller goals, and you start to track your progress, you're encouraged by the progress that you're making, because it sometimes seems a long journey to the end result, but the step-by-step journey can be quite satisfying and quite encouraging. In addition to the plan, I'd say get yourself an accountability partner. You know, preferably somebody that you're not too close with or too familiar with, because in that group, we tend to be more empathetic, and we tend to give ourselves excuses, and our friends or family members, those close to us, tend to empathize with us and allow us to have our excuses. Yeah. You want to get yourself in a place where you can, you know, whether it's a colleague at work or whether it's a mentor that you have or a coach. And, you know, generally people do well when they know that they're going to be asked about whether they've done what they said they were going to do 2 weeks ago or a month ago, etc. And they want to show up at the next meeting or the next engagement saying, I've accomplished that. So accountability is really valuable to people. And then, you know, resources. What do you need in order to be able to get to where you want to go? And do you need help? And if you need help, who are you going to ask for help? So that's important, is identifying the resources and the help that you need. And then finally, I would say take action. Because as I said at the very beginning of our discussion today, it's in the taking of action that oftentimes the next step reveals itself. And so even if you have a plan, sometimes things don't go according to plan after you've started to take action, but something else will come up, will show you the way to go. And so taking action is key.
Fantastic. All right, so let's go through that one more time. Develop that plan, find a partner to keep you accountable, and then the third one was find your resources, and then just do it.
Yeah.
Take that action. Now,
what you missed right there was at that very beginning point, which is clearly define what you want and what it's going to do for you and why you want it.
Yeah, that's the most important part.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And what do you do? Just get a pen and paper and write it down? What are some ways to kind of develop or to explore that?
That's interesting you should say that, because oftentimes when we're talking vision in the coaching space with my clients, I refer to a passage of scripture, Habakkuk 2:2. In that passage, we're told, get the vision, write it down, make it plain, so that he who sees it can run. And that's exactly it. You know, once you've written it down and you make it plain, you have your plan, you make it plain, you know why, then you know exactly what to do. And I just love the fact that the scripture tells us you can run, or whoever sees it, he who sees it can run, because then they know exactly what to do and they can start moving forward rapidly towards that goal.
Fantastic. And I mean, that's a clear definition there, that's good for the leader, but also for the team that works with the leader. Now, looking at the business model, as you said, you work very closely with business. You can work with businesses as well, doing this very same practice, developing that vision and the strategy that comes with it. What's the starting point for small businesses who are hearing this and thinking, well, it sounds like a great idea, but I'm trying to survive? What's your message to them?
I think that honestly, it almost sounds repetitive, but survival is in the vision. So, even going back to the Bible again, Proverbs 29:18 tells us where there is no vision, the people perish. And, what is the opposite of perishing? I would say it's thriving. So that means if we have a vision, then we're going to be able to thrive. And so it really is getting clear about why you're offering the services that you're offering, and what mark then in Belize or in the world do you want to make with it? What do you want your outcome to be after 2, 5, 10 years in service? Let's look at that big picture and really see what you need. We've got to get out of the day-to-day challenge, the day-to-day minutia in the business, and we've got to work on the business and look at a future and what that future might look like for you.
That's right. So they can move out of the daily outing of fires and move towards being fireproof.
Exactly. Yeah. Because your vision is compelling, or should be compelling enough to make you fireproof. Doesn't mean to say that you're not going to meet fires and you're not going to have to put out fires along the way, but you're able to stay on track. And like I said, you're able to measure your progress. And I think that's really important.
Now, just, as you observe what's happening in the country right now, and you hear, we know all the problems that exist, from the unemployment to the economy, and just the general mood that people are in, the fear that they have, the concerns that they have, the loss that some people have experienced. What would be your message just to the wider public as to how to start off this year with the right mindset, acknowledging that there are a lot of challenges that we collectively face?
Honestly, I say we have life. And with that, we have the opportunity and even the responsibility to decide what to do with it. And so if we're not overwhelmed with some of the challenges that this COVID situation is bringing us, we're in a better position to choose what to focus on. And I think it's very important to focus on what you can do. Don't be put off by what you can't do and what the limitations are, but really look at what you can do and move towards whatever steps that you can take for your life, for your relationships, for your family, for your business. And so I think err on the side of hope. And for those who are overwhelmed, there is a lot more help today in Belize than we've had for years. I'm seeing much more psychological and mental health services coming up on Facebook, especially. I'm familiar with some in the Belmopan area, and I know that already there are a couple of people in life coaching training as well. So get some help, talk to your friends, talk to your family, but try to steer your conversation on the side of hope and what is your best hope for 2021.
All right, and how do people get in touch with you?
I have a website, so coachingwithmelanie.com, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram, Coaching with Melanie. I'm on LinkedIn, Melanie Escalante.
All right, well, Melanie, thank you so much for sharing these tips with us as we all start off 2021, and we want to do so with the right start. Stay safe, and once again, thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Take care.
Right.
God bless.
And with that, we are going to go ahead and take our break, and we'll have our wrap up in a few. Stay tuned.
If we are only as strong as our families, businesses, institutions, and the communities that surround us, then by giving businesses the power to grow, entrepreneurs the ability to expand, and by giving our families the right to own something. The Belize Bank gives you the power to build a nation, our nation. We are stronger together. The Belize Bank, our country, your bank.
Every day, young persons are infecting older and high-risk family members and friends with the COVID-19 virus. This Christmas could become the super spreader event we've all been afraid of. The end result is suffering and a horrible death. Please, do not let a couple of hours of fun cause a lifetime of mourning and pain. Practice physical distancing, wash hands often, and wear your mask properly. Staying home this Christmas will ensure many more with your loved ones in the years to come. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
It's a fact that your credit lasts longer when using Smart. During these times, we're all trying to find ways to cut costs and save the little resources we have. With Smart, it's easy to do that. It's a fact that with Smart, your credit lasts longer. You can call Smart to Smart and Smart to Digi using your promo credit, while with the other guy, you can only call OnNet, Digi, or BTL numbers. What does this mean? You get to call any national number using your promo credit. Your promo credit is free, so that call is also free. Know your facts. Don't be tricked by the other guy. Be smart and save your dollars. We are back. That detailed conversation we had with the former aide-de-camp, Alan Usher, on having worked with the late Dame Minita Gordon was a rather interesting one, considering the wealth of knowledge that he has and he shared with us regarding her career, her life, and of course some of her professional achievements in the capacity of being the first Governor General of Belize.
I think what was fascinating for me, and as we said earlier, I grew up, I was telling someone here earlier, I used to do puppetry with the library service, and I always remember one year being Dame Minita Gordon in one of the puppet shows. So the name and a bit of the story was embedded in my mind, especially her role as an educator. But what was interesting was to find out a couple of things, and this is, of course, looking at representation of women. She was a trained psychologist, the first trained psychologist in Belize, and she was also the first female governor or queen representative that was named at that time. Just such a huge achievement in itself. So I think those are things that in her passing I now learned that really make me feel so proud of what she was able to do during that time. She was the Governor General from 1981, when we first became an independent country, to 1993. And clearly, given the outpouring of messages that we've seen, she connected with a lot of people.
Quite a lot of people.
Yeah. All right. And then we want to thank Dr. Hidalgo for sharing with us just some insight as we move into 2021. There's still unanswered questions, and I think that's something that we must all come to terms with. It has been, I know, a difficult adjustment in 2020, just not knowing or hearing information, and then it gets changed over time. But that's just what happens as we all learn about a new virus collectively. And in 2021, there are still questions that are yet to be answered that are critical in us being able to contain this pandemic. And so we thank Dr. Hidalgo for sharing his perspective on that.
While there is some optimism that we'll get through the pandemic, my thinking is that we won't get all the questions answered right away, because it's a process where studies will still be conducted long after, you know, based on the number of questions, the myriad questions and concerns that we have about the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, it's simple. Like, if we're in year 2 of the pandemic, we don't know the effects of COVID at year 5 because no one's made it there yet. So, you know, it's going to be that process. I guess this morning just reminded us that while we are moving into another year with some uncertainties, let's look at the positives and see that in 2020 we were able to figure some things out.
Yeah.
And that's led us to where we are today. Yeah. And then life coaching.
Life coaching for individuals and businesses who are goal-oriented, but they need the extra oomph, so to speak, to get them to realize these particular visions. Then starting off 2021 with the right professional and personal advice is the best foot forward.
Absolutely. You know, and I think Melanie said it right. In Belize, it's kind of just starting to gain traction, but in the rest of the world, this is just such a common part of what businesses and professionals do. Consider if you were training for a sport, or if you were trying to get fit, you get someone who can help to guide you in that direction. They won't do the work for you, but they'll teach you how to do the work. And it is the very same in looking at our own personal and professional development. So I thank her for joining us and giving us those tips this morning. First of all, define the vision that you have, what you want to be able to accomplish, write out that plan, look for your resources, and then execute. Did I miss something? I think I missed one of the steps, but thankfully you can go back and rewatch that segment on Facebook or YouTube. But we want to thank Melanie, and of course you can catch up with her. She is on Facebook and Instagram, Melanie Escalante, or coachingwithmelanie.com. All right. So that's all the time we have for today. You can always contact us by sending us an email at oye@channel5belize.com. You can also find us on Facebook at Open Your Eyes BZ and on Instagram at OYEBelize. Remember to tune in tomorrow morning at 6:30 when you open your eyes
to start your morning right.
Until then, keep your eyes, your mind,
and your hearts open.
We'll see you soon. Enjoy your day, Belize.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.